Oh.
It's a psychology thing that, as far as I remember, well, that's one central to a really mediocre fanfic I read. Two, I think it's been debunked.
Huh. Well, hello.
Regardless, let's start the video.
I've already started the video. Hello, everyone. We're going to learn about Balthasar Gelt. The only thing I know about him is he is a wizard that can turn things into gold, and he loves every second of it. And one of his lines from Total Warhammer is, "Friendship is more valuable than gold, or so they tell me." He's, quite literally, as Met was saying...
I'm just imagining some dickhead who mostly casts his magic by just doing fucking finger guns at things.
Probably has one line that says,
Gold! Gold!
One of his lines is also, "I am supreme!" But yeah. He's,
All right,
I kind of want to... I think his attacks are actually just causing gold to rain from the sky and hit people.
Why don't you just fucking turn them into gold?
I don't know.
Like, yeah, you have some very unsettling statues, but, you can still melt them down.
I mean, gold is really heavy, so I bet it hurt a lot. Anyway. Though, funny enough, gold is actually one of the softest metals around. Like, pure gold, if you put your hands on it just lightly, it'll create an indent. Anyway. Balthasar Gelt.
I could bend for nuts.
Balthasar Gelt, I cast economic recession. I actually love that. You make him sound like he's Mansa Musa.
There's a few things in life that just about
Oh,
everyone
good, you know who that is.
on. You need food and water to live, for example.
I am a history major.
Yes, and you know the interesting history.
Air is also nice, but even beyond basic needs that I'm only listing because I couldn't think of a better opening.
I wish I had
there's
lots of
plenty
money,
other
then I
things
could make all
everyone
the
can agree
projects.
Would probably be good. Having a lot of money, for example. To be
Yeah.
sure, there's a certain point where money stops buying happiness for people, but I can
Yeah,
also be sure
it doesn't
most
really
people
buy
wouldn't say
happiness.
no to
There's
being
a
handed
point.
$1 million with no strings attached.
The best way I can describe it is like money takes care of your needs. It doesn't actually make you happy, is what I think. Like, it takes care of your problems, but sure, that makes you basically break even in a way in life. Know what I mean?
I want enough money to have the breathing room to indulge in my hobbies.
So do I. I want to be able to start making more of those comic videos, start making the video game that's on the way, guys, and, have us do that bridge series we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Some monks in the mountains, maybe, but your average person is grabbing that suitcase full of cash in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Or how about being magical? Look me in the eyes and tell me that if someone said you could become a powerful mage, you would say no.
I
No one
wouldn't.
would say no to that because
No
everyone
one
wants
would.
to be a wizard. Even you, person who's gonna LARP in the comments and call magic dishonorable. Magic is great. Wave your hands and cast a cool spell. It'd be fantastic.
I want to
Just
put...
imagine prestidigitation in your everyday life. You would never need to clean your house again.
I
Those
prestidigitate
things
your
fed into each
nuts.
Why?
They're purple now.
I just want to cast Arc Lightning at everything. Why do you go with that? Listen, I just want to cast Arc Lightning on my boss.
myself to cantrip.
Listen, I just want to cast Arc Lightning on my boss and the middle manager, and then we'll be good.
What if your powerful magic could make you a richer person? And what if
Oh.
all your money allowed you to get things to become an even more powerful wizard? Wouldn't that be something special? Well, in the world of Warhammer Fantasy, we've got a
There
character
he
who's
is.
just that. Balthasar Gelt. He's rich, he's powerful, he's a wizard extraordinaire. In fact, in the Empire of Man, I'd go so far as to say he's the wizard. Though there may be some more powerful than he, there's no one who can control the lore of metal quite like he does. So get comfortable, and listen about the man who used his mighty gifts of the arcane to scam taxi drivers out of $50. But before we talk about golden wizards...
I just realized, oh my god, he's quite literally has an ability called Lore of Metal. Quite literally, and yes, that's he wears a golden mask. Because of course he does.
You can see my lovely face here, because I'm here to talk to you about something
I've never
near
seen
and
his
dear
face
to me.
before.
cereal. More specifically, Magic Spoon.
Have you ever
is the
tried Magic
sponsor of
Spoon?
this video. How about I just cut to the chase?
I
love
haven't.
cereal,
No.
but cereal doesn't.
I kind of want to
love
give it a
me
try
because eating
once.
it tends to send my blood sugar into the stratosphere.
I don't know
Magic
how it works
Spoon is
out.
here with
I'm
one
sticking
hell
with
of a
Captain Crunch
nutritional
till
label
then.
for me. 0 grams of sugar and 4 to 5 net
Maybe
grams
I'll try
carbs
it one
per
day.
serving.
We'll see.
That saves my poor old pancreas quite a bit of trouble. And if you have any sort of restrictions on sugar or carb intake, it'll be just as good for you. 13 to 14 grams of
I
protein
just don't
per
trust
serving
most
too,
YouTube
so he even help you
sponsorships.
pack
Like,
on some muscle. But how about
give it a
taste?
year,
Yeah,
we
just
might
taste
find
tricky.
out, like, oh yeah, they were shipping people cardboard.
I mean, maybe, but some people need these kind of sponsorships just to break even, so I can't really blame these guys, you know?
But like, when you're selling these scam browser add-ons or fucking VPNs that only steal my data and not much else,
I just don't really use any of the stuff they promote, really. Anyway. I'm going to try Magic Spoon just to see if it's actually any good, but we'll see.
Fruity, cocoa,
'Cause it is at
frosted
my-
peanut butter,
Yeah,
and
well,
plenty more, all
It's at my
available
local
to suit whatever
store, at
taste
my
you
local,
have.
not
And
convenience
all of
store,
them.
but
I like frosted the most
market.
because anything that tastes even remotely like icing to me is going to be my favorite, but they're all plenty tasty.
But if
As
these
proof,
really
here's me
taste as
devouring
good,
some. I don't know about you, but
we'll
I
see
can't
if
think
it
of a
tastes
better
like
recommendation for
cardboard
food than eating
later.
it. And if you're interested in getting some Magic
We'll
Spoon,
see.
which you should be, it's good eating, I've got a deal for you. Use
But
my
yeah,
code
I don't
PancreasNoWork
really-
or click my link in the description.
unless
to
it's
get
like
$5
really,
off
really
your
bad,
Magic
I
Spoon
don't
order.
really
If you
get
prefer
angry at
real-life
people
shopping,
for
you can find it in
taking
your local
sponsors like
grocery
this.
store. They're so confident you'll like it that there's a 100% happiness guarantee online. If you don't like it, you'll get a refund. No questions asked.
nice.
So click the link in the description to go to magicspoon.com.
Yeah, I'll tell you if
for
Magic Spoon
$5
is
off.
actually any
Get
good.
yourself some Magic
It
Spoon
looks like
today.
Snap Crackle Pop
Now
to
then,
me.
funny gold mask man. Balthasar Gelt doesn't exactly come from the most
You mean
noble
Rice
and
Krispies?
exciting of fantasy
Yes,
origins.
I don't
but
know
he
why I
does come
said
from
that, but everyone ignore what I just said.
a position that lends credence as to how he was able to gain the position he eventually would. He was the
Okay.
son of someone who was not only a phenomenal apothecary, but the doctor of a noble house in the Border Princess.
Ah.
So while not exactly coming from a long line of kings or heroes, he came from a reasonably wealthy family that could afford him chances to look into more untraditional careers, as it were.
Cool.
Indeed, he appeared to be quite talented at creating medicine, doing far better than even those with decades of experience on him. He also had an almost
Goddamn.
instinctual grasp on the properties of various minerals and herbs, like a somewhat less full of himself Dr. House. His true passion, however, was
Wow.
alchemy.
What?
Presumably using the wealth both his family and his own works had given him, he was able to travel the world and study under the most intelligent people the lands had to offer. Tylea,
Crazy.
Araby, Estalia, beyond. Everywhere he went, he would not only learn everything his teachers had to teach, but
And
almost
more.
always he'd end up being able to teach them a thing or two. By the
Wow.
time he finally came to the
That's
colleges
insane.
of Magic and Altdorf, he was admitted into it with absolutely no questions asked.
Yeah,
He was just that
I
damn
can
good.
understand that.
Except everything before that bit was very possibly just a lie.
Oh
Gelt's
my
fooled all
God.
of you. Because while it's true he was admitted without a formal apprenticeship due to his impressive skill, no one actually knows where he comes from or what his
What?
backstory is.
Oh,
he
that's-
certainly isn't being upfront about it, and any investigations that have been conducted to explain who the hell the Magic Metal Man is have come up short. They do
Yeah.
occasionally find people who have dealt with him before, but whenever they bring him up, the conversation abruptly stops. Maybe he's threatening them, or maybe
Oh.
that previous story has some truth and they're embarrassed he showed him up. For all we know, he put a curse on everyone who's talked to him so that they explain who he is, they turn into gold on the spot. We do at least
I mean, it's possible. Wizards can be like that, especially if they have dark secrets, because they don't want anyone to know what's going on. They don't want their former teachers or whatnot to expose their weaknesses. Or it could just all be
Yeah.
embarrassment. It's weird. It's weird Warhammer lore. We don't know if it is or isn't true. God damn it! I feel like I'm dealing with the
Get to the gold.
Alpha Legion. I know.
know how he arrived in Altdorf. He came on a merchant ship from Marienburg after paying for it with solid gold bars.
Oh!
Which days after arriving in Altdorf turned into solid lead bars.
Oh.
The ship captain put a bounty on Gelt's head for fooling
Oh
him
my
like
God.
that. To my knowledge, it's still there to this day. Jumping ahead a bit, this means the holder of one of the highest positions in the entire Empire of Man has a bounty on his head. And
Wow.
no one has tried to claim it yet.
Well,
Or at least
yeah.
if anyone has, we don't hear from them anymore. It
Oh.
should be noted that at least from everything I know about the guy, he didn't need to do that. Whether or not he does come from a somewhat wealthy family, he's an incredibly powerful metal wizard.
Here's the
and
thing.
can turn
Sometimes
things
when you just have a strong enough reputation, people just won't try anything. Because the stories are enough to make them back off. So, yeah.
into gold permanently. Even
Oh.
ignoring that, he absolutely
Wait.
powerful metal wizard and can turn things into gold permanently. Even ignoring
That's
that, he
horrifying.
absolutely could have made some money with his own talents and skills. As
Yeah.
far as I can tell, he just scammed that captain for the love of the game. Upon becoming a licensed Imperial wizard, though, he didn't just sit around and enjoy all the perks that gives. However much of
Okay.
his backstory is true or not, his passion for alchemy and the lore of metal
He loves
undoubtedly
gold.
is. He would set to work in the College of Metal's workshops and labs with a
Indeed.
fervor unmatched by anyone else, and his enthusiasm for both learning and
Mr.
teaching apparently made him a
Powers.
popular
Oh my
figure
God.
in the lecture halls. And honestly, who wouldn't want to be taught by Gelt? Within a
Yeah.
decade, he'd become the Patriarch of the Metal College, taking the position from the previous one, Magdalena Althaus.
Okay.
Minor fun lore fact, they're called the Supreme Matriarch if they're a woman. He even gained quite a few friends
Oh,
amongst Imperial
interesting.
engineers. Alchemy in fantasy settings tends to be equal parts science and magic, and Gelt respected both fields. He was
Cool.
in particular interested in finding
Science,
out newer
magic, and
better
anime.
formulas for gun.
It's usually, well, sometimes. Usually there's a rivalry between magic and technology sometimes. But yeah, it's nice to see that he worked with
I
them
say
on
that's
this.
stupid. Make Magitech.
Sometimes, but there's also worlds where magic quite literally bends the rules of reality, which kind of screws with technology. You know, because it's trains and,
Yes, but like,
like cannons and guns and stuff need those laws to work. But yeah,
what if you build a gun that wouldn't work normally but does work when it's being when the laws are being stressed by magic?
oh no, you've created something that the dwarves would probably like. Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Powder, and his respect for material science made sure that the Imperial Gunnery School was happy whenever Gelt came around, even though they usually aren't too fond of wizard crap. Maybe
Oh.
he should have been a bit more careful with some of those experiments, though, because
Oh.
one day something went rather explosively wrong.
Oh no.
The specifics of what exactly happened, like many things about Gelt, are a mystery. Truth be told, it could have been any number of things. Messing around
Yeah.
with gunpowder is asking for trouble at the best of times.
Yeah.
The same could be said for magic in this setting,
Yeah.
and Gelt, being a lore of metal wizard, had bravely devoted his life to digging
Oh, that's why he
around
wears
with the
the
dangerous
mask.
parts of both reality and unreality. For all we know, that ship captain that put a bounty on his head got his revenge and snuck a bomb in or something.
Possibly.
We don't even know how he came out of this whole affair. Is he horribly disfigured, or is the skin beneath his golden mask now the purest living gold? We don't know and never will, because Gelt refuses to take it off. That second option would be incredibly funny, though, given the Tomb King's
That's fair.
existence and Cetra's demand prior to his death. Turns out living gold bodies are easy as hell to obtain. Just blow yourself up. That may be the reason he hides behind the mask, actually. If he really did have golden skin and Cetra found out, the Empire of Man would be crawling in Tomb Kings until they kidnapped him and forced him to recreate what happened. This accident wasn't the wake-up call to either calm down or find a new profession.
So we don't know what he actually looks underneath then. I actually thought he was horribly disfigured, like Doctor Doom style. Well, Doctor Doom actually wasn't horribly disfigured. He just had a little scar. But,
I was about to say, Richard's fucked up my perfect complexion. Well, actually, Victor, you... Richards! I put a bottle rocket in your toilet.
okay. Anyway, what I was going to say about Gelt is...
Tremble before doom!
Alright. What I was going to say was... Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, from what I know about Cetra, is one thing that he wants more than anything is when he was supposed to return from life, is he wanted a body made of solid gold. Or a body made of gold. So if he does have that, the Tomb Kings would come for him. Specifically.
Yeah.
Because Cetra, along with the so many tiles, I'm not even going to speak them here. We need to watch a lore video on him at some point. But he's...
Unfortunate.
He has so many quite literally, it's a meme. Anyway, we go back to learning about Balthasar Gelt.
As it probably should have been.
Yeah.
Gelt, if anything, renewed his studies with more interest than ever before.
Oh.
One fateful day, he even managed to become the Supreme Patriarch, a fact which he lets you know every other time you select him in Total War.
Oh.
Every 8 years, you see, the colleges of magic would come together to decide the next one. A contest is held which involves the current Supreme Patriarch
Ah.
and the representatives of the other 7 orders entering what's known as the Obsidian Hall. Obsidian apparently dampens magic, which is especially important here because the
interesting.
contest is a magical duel that's over when one of the 2 contestants grabs the Staff of Olans that rests in the center of the hall. It
All
isn't
right.
strictly speaking to the death, and in fact that's generally frowned upon, but one of the lores of magic in this setting is the lore of death magic.
Ah.
It happens sometimes. The incumbent then faces the challengers one at a time until there's either a new Supreme Patriarch or the current one gets to
Wizard
keep the job
battle.
for another 8 years. Gelt won this contest, becoming the new Supreme Patriarch
Oh,
after
damn.
beating Thyrus Gorman, a lore of fire wizard who,
Cheeky
on a
torch.
related note, is built like a goddamn freight train.
Yeah.
Ever since he's
Oh.
largely continued on as he has, only with more power at his commands, both politically and literally. In
I
fact,
like
just
the
to show
look
you
until
how
I
serious
noticed
I am,
the 4 fucking tiki torches.
Yeah, he has those all
That's
around him.
just stupid.
He
commands
he
both
controls fire. He can do what he wants. Are you guys saying no to this man?
I'm going to call him an idiot, then I'm going to burn him to death. That's the plan.
Oh my god.
is built like a goddamn freight train. Ever since he's largely continued on as he has, only with
Oh.
more power at his commands, both politically and literally.
Oh.
In fact, just to show you how serious I am, I'm going to compare him favorably to the elves. Balthasar
Oh.
Gelt, being human,
I-
might not be the most powerful wizard in the setting. Teclis, Mazdamundi, Marathi, and a few others are undoubtedly able to overpower him. But
Probably. Masta Mundi is the Slan, the leader of the Lizardmen. One of them. Yes, I know about Lizardman
so the-
lore. I love the Lizardmen. And
I'd
Hypnotoad.
love to say it just clicked. So I was questioning earlier, why does he just drop gold on people instead of turning them into gold statues? Because you know what kills people better than a bludgeoning?
Hmm?
Having lungs made of inflexible metal. But if he turns people into living gold, then that's different. You can't
Yeah.
go around flaunting that.
True.
in mastery of the winds of metal particularly, he is unrivaled. Not a single
Oh.
being alive knows the winds of metal as well as he does. In fact,
True.
assuming we take his potential backstory as true, that would explain why he was so talented with minerals and herbs. One of the
Yeah.
spells of the lore of metal is Breach the Unknown, and it tells you
Huh?
everything about an object, from its chemical composition to any magical properties. it
Oh,
might have.
that's
He could have
horrifying.
been unconsciously using that spell as a kid. There was one battle known
Crazy.
as the Slaughter at the Six Spikes, where he more or less single-handedly turned the tide of battle. Truth be told, most of it isn't terribly important. It was the Beastmen using the aforementioned Six Spikes, which as it turns out were magical rocks to bring ruin to the realms of man and
That's
all
dumb.
that jazz. The very shaman in charge of the Beastmen horde was casting fell magics and making a terrible storm. There were great and
Yeah.
terrible beasts such as Gorgons and Minotaurs, and all kinds of stuff I'm sure is terribly frightening in universe. Out of universe,
Definitely.
we know the Beastmen never amount to anything, so it's kind of hard to care.
Yeah, in lore, the Beastmen are the, rivals to the Wood Elves, but they usually don't do much. Honestly.
That's fair.
They've gotten better, apparently, in Total Warhammer. Like, they need a complete and utter redesign because of just how bad they did in-game.
Oof, that bad, huh?
Yeah. Because they were trying to do the Horde Army thing. The problem with Total Warhammer is you need structures in order to grow. It was very weird and hodgepodge how they originally moved, from what I heard.
So what you're saying is they didn't have the means to keep up the structure to actually
Yeah.
manage a horde.
Because they were supposed to be a roving horde. The problem is people can just resettle the places you destroy. So it's just...
Yeah?
Yeah, you can leave Chaos Corruption, but in Warhammer Fantasy, there are counters to Chaos Corruption. So, it's the giant cycle, the giant wheel.
To be honest. The Empire apparently sent warnings regarding this threat in part with mechanical pigeons, though. So that's
Mechanical
neat.
pigeons?
I'm sorry. Being dismissive of the Beastmen is so ingrained in Warhammer, I can't help myself.
Yeah.
Even in Total War, facing them is more inconvenient than threatening half the
It's
time.
worse
with
now,
the
but
singular
yeah.
exception of Franz's early campaign, where they glass Middenheim as often as not. To be fair to them, the Empire force was led by Kurt Hellborg, head
Who?
of the Reichsguard and all-around cool dude. If he's
Ah.
being brought to the fight, it can't be a small incursion, and even with both constant casualties inflicted on the Beastman and his magnificent mustache, the Empire was being pushed back. No cannon shots could harm any of the spikes, and it looked like without something decisive happening, man would lose to beast. Then Balthasar Gelt came riding in on his Pegasus Quicksilver with reinforcements. Reinforcements, I should add, that consisted of the entirety of the Imperial Zoo in Altdorf. He just bound them to his will and threw them into battle.
He just took the entire Imperial Zoo and just had them attack the Beastmen. Oh my god. I can't believe this man. I think I love this. It's so goofy.
I haven't the slightest idea how he did this, because unless I'm missing something, the Lore of Metal doesn't have any spells that let him do that. This included the dragon that the Empire keeps, by the way. Gelt is just built different to your average person.
He just
Gelt
unleashed
is
a dragon
smart
on them.
lad. He knew that even with his literal menagerie of reinforcements, he couldn't quite turn the tide if he just landed in the middle of the battlefield. So he took his beasts, jumped the Bray Shaman and his assistants atop the 6 spikes, and either had them turned to gold or ripped apart. Wizards gotten rid of, he then turned most of the rest of the Beastman army into gold. It said that not a single one managed to escape, which is in all honesty an incredibly impressive feat. They're damn fast, but Gelt and Quicksilver were apparently faster. Worth mentioning is that while Gelt isn't directly involved in every single instance of a wizard doing something in the Empire, he is the supreme Patriarch. Nothing important is going to go on amongst the mages of man without his knowledge of it in some way.
That's a good point.
Given that, you can safely assume some level of involvement on Balthasar Gelt's part in anything sufficiently magical that occurs in most books that happen in what was Warhammer Fantasy's modern setting. Oh, there's also another time Gelt pulled the old gold is actually lead trick, although this time he actually turned real gold into lead, so it was sort of reversed. The Elector Count of Nordland was being aggressive towards the province of Hawkland. Karl told Gelt to fix it, so Gelt went to Nordland, turned the Count's treasury into lead, and then left. Please be aware, viewer, that this is not the last time he does this. Running through to the end times, and Gelt has some moments, to be sure. In as much fairness as one can possibly give the end times, which is not much in brutal honesty, the moment Gelt is known for only comes
everything I've heard about it. Bad.
Yeah, basically, in order to do the things they do, characters have to basically break character and jump through so many hoops just to cause the end times.
And prior to that, he puts in a pretty good showing of things, and a lot of what he does is at least understandable. Reading what happens to him, I don't get the feeling I do for a lot of other instances in the end times. That feeling naturally being, what the hell are the authors smoking? See, after Volkmar vanished into Sylvania, which would lead him to possibly the worst fate imaginable, Gelt constructed what was known as the Wall of Faith around the entire province. He got the idea from one of his apprentices, which was assisted even further by the delivery of a scroll from a rather odd but ultimately helpful woman. It allowed for faith and magic to be blended almost perfectly. As long as it was maintained by both mages and priests, the wall would be held strong.
Interesting.
Unfortunately for our man, this was immediately the start of his downfall. Because the woman was a vampire working for Neferata, and was probably that one vampire named Genevieve who has the single longest full name in any Warhammer setting short of Cetra and the knight from Shoota's Blood and Teeth. And his apprentice earlier was actually the Changeling. I believe it was unsaid why the Changeling was giving Gelt away to keep the vampires.
The Changeling is a creature, is a demon of Zeech, the trickster god. You know, the god of change.
Because he has 5 arms then.
It's a thing.
But there's 3 likely options. A, this was done to stall Nagash's return as long as possible. B, this was just step 1 of the naturally convoluted plan to get the Changeling integrated in the Empire to wreak the most amount of havoc possible. Or C, Zeech and the Changeling were bored and thought it'd be funny. Zeech doesn't really need a reason to scheme over complicated BS like this. It's his whole thing. Gelt, for his part, gained quite a bit of popularity for cordoning off all of Sylvania. Both wanted to keep the Empire safe, and being the kind of person who shouts out, "I am supreme," during a battle, he decided he'd go for gold and make an even bigger wall. This time it was across the entire Empire of Man's.
Imagine you see a guy in armor and he's wearing a mask under his fucking armor.
He's wearing an entire golden mask, but yeah, he's shooting and turning people into solid gold.
Gotta say, it wasn't subtle, but it was sure as hell effective. Just plonking an entire massive wall across your country's borders in the blink of an eye is certainly a good way to keep demons out. And
that's crazy.
Enough, Archaon and his horde couldn't immediately breach their way in. Unfortunately for Gelt, this is the part where he starts realizing he has a lot of issues to deal with. First off, Chaos being the bigger threat meant that the wall around Sylvania had fallen somewhat by the wayside. It was still there, but it wasn't being nearly as maintained as it needed to be given the Auric Bastion coming to existence. Compounding on this is that the Auric Bastion's far larger scale meant little cracks tended to appear here and there, weaknesses that could be taken advantage of. Not yet catastrophic ones, or at least not ones that an entire horde could swarm through, but cracks were appearing in the wall, segments were weakening. And to top it off, Gelt finally wisened up to the fact that the Changeling was running amok, and he allied with the R. Ulrich Emil Valgir to sniff him out. Because the only thing Gelt loves more than money and power is apparently digging himself deeper into a hole, he also came across Vlad von Karstein.
Why?
Now, I understand everyone loves Vlad. I also love Vlad. But in universe, not many people like Vlad. He's a bit of an untrusted figure on account of being a vampire and nearly toppling the Empire. So
yeah, he's the leader of the vampire counts. So yeah, not a lot of people like him, especially when he's rebelled. Because originally Slovenia was a part of the Empire.
when him and Vlad have a chat about the wall, and Vlad gives him a tome that teaches him how to do necromancy, what Gelt should have done was burn it. What he did instead was very briefly debate using it.
Okay, so the smart thing to do, don't mess with necromancy, as far as I know, in Warhammer.
That is... Don't mess with a book that can look you in the eye.
Yeah.
It was a necessary evil, and then immediately start raising zombies to defend the Auric Bastion.
Wait, what?
This led up to a confrontation.
The same goes for swords.
Like, I understand he wanted to...
If your sword can blink, don't use it.
Oh. Anyway, what I was going to say, he started using it?
Elector Count of Hochland, who was a little bit pissed about him being a necromancer, which ended in the Elector Count's death, which is just a slight smidgen of treason. Even worse for Gelt was that he discovered that Valten was to be gifted Galmaraz itself, being the pseudo-incarnation of Sigmar and all that. Problem here is that he had learned that Valten was almost certainly the Changeling, and handing over the symbol of the Empire and Warhammer itself to a Tzeentch demon was not a good outcome. So naturally, he went to go rescue Galmaraz and Karl from the Changeling's evil clutches. And then when his desperate argument that more or less amounted to, "Please trust me, Mr. Emperor, he's for real a bad guy," didn't work, he just gave up and started summoning zombies to try and kill Valten with. Shocker, not only does this not work because Kurt Helborg held him off, but Valten wasn't even the Changeling.
Oh, god damn it.
This was promptly dealt with, but by this point Gelt had lost any semblance of faith in himself and wandered off to be one of Vlad's many hanger-ons, since he clearly couldn't handle independence. Worse off for the Empire than just losing its supreme patriarch was losing the Auric Bastion. Because it was supported by wizards and priests, it needed a constant stream of both faith and magic to keep it going. And when it turns out the guy who created it was a necromancer that tried to kill the dude who was probably the rain god reborn, no one was exactly feeling the Auric Bastion. Whether or not this was Tzeentch's ultimate plan, or if it was just a happy consolation prize instead of Galmaraz, I'll leave for you to decide. But at the end of the day, the wall came down, and chaos can now invade the Empire properly. He and Vlad, for their part, create one hell of an undead army to fight chaos with, and at Everheim, he eventually manages to have another moral compass turnaround and binds himself to the winds of Shamon, purging the dark arts of necromancy from his mind. Funnily enough, though, he isn't done agreeing with the evil bastards, because he and Malekith are the only ones who say that Nagash isn't someone the incarnates of the winds of magic should ally with. On the one hand, Balthasar Gelt probably doesn't have any room to be arguing against necromancy after the shit he pulled, but on the other hand, he does have experience on why it's a bad idea. Also, Nagash. I get it, come Age of Sigmar, I'm Nagash's #1 fan, but we're still in fantasy here. Do not trust this man. You can't even say that with a straight face. This isn't a man. This is a god. This is Nagash. Trusting him is worth...
He's a trickster god, and for what I know, he is also the god of necromancy. So he's always trying to whisper in people's ear.
Because you can probably see Tzeentch's betrayal coming a mile away. But they do, and then it's off to try and pull one final ritual to save the world. Man, you know how it goes. It's never fun talking about the end of the end times, but because Gelt is very involved in the big event, I kind of feel obligated. You know what makes everything even worse, though? In the ritual the Incarnates were going to cast to stave off the end of the world, they had more or less retaken Middenheim. I mean, sure, not completely. For example, Sigmar and Archaon were still wrestling over the big hammer somewhere, but they were able to start casting an incredibly magic and focus-intense ritual to save the world. You can't do that in the middle of a battlefield, because otherwise you'd be getting stabbed. And sure enough, the Incarnates weren't doing it in the middle of the battlefield, at least enough of it was moved away so all their respective armies could hold off chaos while the big names did the ritual. And then Balthasar Gelt made the assumption that he wasn't going to be stabbed in the back while he was saving the world by a vampire who was only doing it to spite his father one last time.
Oh, God.
Thank you, Manfred. Whenever someone brings up
it's Manfred von Karstein. God damn it. He's a useless vampire who constantly gets away even though he's a loser.
And for Erebus,
The
it's an
god of
easy answer.
prosecutors?
No, Manfred von Karstein, not Manfred von Karma.
Erebus gave us 40k.
Okay, but did he
Manfred
burn
removed the
fingerprints off at the chemical factory?
Oh my god.
amount of Warhammer that exists in the universe, because he wasn't involved in any way in Age of Sigmar's birth.
My
when it comes
God,
to
what a
universe
fucking
actions taken.
tool. Look
Not
at this
intentionally,
guy.
At least, he had no idea.
Yeah, he almost got killed by, from what I know, he almost got killed by, god damn it, I can't remember their names. The guys...
There's a lot of dumb armor in Warhammer. This armor looks, well, this is dumb armor that doesn't even look cool.
Mortal Realms.
Yeah, it's not looking good. Manfred von Karstein has never looked cool.
He just wanted to spite Vlad, so he stabbed Gelt in the back. With that, unfortunately,
God
the tale
damn it.
of Balthasar Gelt ends here. A great, if by no means unselfish hero who died trying his best to save the world. Even if he only did it so he could continue to accrue money and power, hard to argue with someone trying to save the world no matter their motives.
Yeah.
So on a completely unrelated note, let's
Evil
talk
vs.
about this
Oblivion is the
Balthasar.
time-honored, classical motivation.
Yeah.
So on a
Let's hear.
completely unrelated note, let's talk about this Balthasar fellow.
Oh,
he's a
boy.
Stormcast Eternal who has a strange idea that the world that was is where he's originally from in some regard. He's so talented in the lore of metal that it's as if Shamon recognized him somehow.
Yeah, a lot of the characters in AOS, basically, in fantasy, basically got reborn. And guess who this is?
He's met Nagash, who outright said he was looking forward to having him under his thumb again, and he has a mount named Quicksilver. He also rarely, if ever, takes off his golden face mask.
Oh, it's
Golly
almost
gee
like it's
willikers, guys, who
Belvergon.
could this fella be? Did you know Arum is the Latin word for gold? Could be anyone, this guy.
Oh
Truly.
my God.
Our reborn as a superhero
Yeah.
fan may not know who he truly is, but we do.
We
and
do
enough
know.
important people do as well that I wouldn't be surprised if Sigmar specifically sought his soul out.
Yeah.
Temporary traitor or not, he nearly saved the world.
That
when push
plume
came
makes
to
me
shove,
angry
and
for
he
reasons I
continued being
can't
the
put
little
my finger
scammer
on.
we know and
Oh my
love,
God.
only now at the level
I just
of
don't like the way the Stormcast Eternals look. They don't look cool or interesting. They look like reverse Space Marines in the worst way possible.
demigod of war. Remember that
Oh,
business with
yeah.
the Necrocount of Nordland? Well, this time, there was once a city that was rebelling against Sigmar. It was phenomenally wealthy, and as a result had gathered quite the mercenary army to keep itself safe. This would have been a war that, while Sigmar's forces would surely win, would cause no small amount of casualties for even the Stormcast Eternals. So Balthasar Gelt, who had no idea this is the second time he pulled this stunt, flew into the city, turned their massive stored amounts of gold into granite, and because no one was paying them anymore, the mercenaries just left.
I love
Naturally,
that.
the city also surrendered, and likely had to face the mother of all economic crises in the aftermath.
Yeah.
Also, please be aware that a good portion of his motivation for this was that the city had some stuff in it he wanted for his research. So he
Oh, I
threw
love
the
that.
entire thing into an economic recession. He features
God
in the book
damn.
Soul Wars, which I won't really go through, but it's a good read. I will go through the short story The Library of Forgotten Moments, though, because aside from being about his quest to discover who he was, it also has some glorious payback. The story, sure
Oh.
enough, begins with Gelt seeking the Library of Forgotten Moments. He's a Lord Arcanum now, and by his own words, their chief goal above all others is to fix the
Okay.
reforging process of the Stormcast Eternals. But also by his own admission, he's got some more selfish motives. He needs to learn who he was. He has to. He more or less outright says that even if what he learns brings him to madness, it'll at least put him further on some sort of path. There's also a pretty interesting moment where his
Nice.
mount, Quicksilver 2.0, goes at what appears to be light speed. Not important, but damn cool. He reaches the library with what seems to be little fanfare, all things considered, and is granted access by its undead caretakers. This is all in Shyish, by the by, since where else would a library about a dead world be but the land of the dead?
Yeah,
And as he goes
that
deep
makes
into
sense.
the library, he finds a book in a language not from the mortal realms, but one he for some reason knows is familiar to him. He reads
Oh.
a single word, Alcahest, and gets a flashback to the old fantasy world. And do you want to guess what his first vision of his past life was?
What is it?
What great and overwhelming mystery he saw unraveled? The motherfucker's first vision of his past life from a period of time so long ago age no longer
Oh.
has meaning was him scamming the poor ship captain with his gold. He's so committed to the bit that scamming people is embedded in his soul.
I love
Shortly
him
after he
pulling
comes
that
into
shit.
contact with a vampire, or
Oh.
rather the vampire in Age of Sigmar, Manny von Kari
Oh,
himself.
great.
They get into a bit of a duel, are interrupted by the undead keepers of the library and are both escorted to the prized possession of the library. Without spoiling what it is, both because it's a good story you should read for yourself and because it's a short one, so I'd just be spoiling the whole damn thing, what they find is quite related to the old world. They also both recognize each other, although neither of them can really place what their relationship used to be. Manfred is Manfred, so they start fighting again, and Gelt shows that while he may not be the strongest wizard around, he's damn smart. And also a Stormcast now, so he can throw hands physically when need be, too. The story ends with Gelt on the cusp of potentially learning who he once was, and only time and future book releases will tell if he truly finds out.
Well, everyone loves him,
now, with all that said and done, Gelt, to my knowledge, has no special rules on the tabletop.
Yep.
He's had quite the honors at his stories, having spoken with Sigmar
Oh, he's got no
himself and
special rules?
surviving
That
the encounter
sucks.
with Nagash, but no rules, which is a shame. I can honestly understand him not
You
getting
think there'd be
battle because he
something
always
for
wears
your
the
gold
masks,
now?
Yeah.
so you can just call
Like,
a lord
this
or
is
command
now a piece of cover.
and be happy with it, but some rules would be appreciated. He's also not in the old world either, slightly more understandably though, because this is a good few hundred years before his birth. And just to further rub salt in my
The best way to describe it is Warhammer Fantasy Old World is basically when Sigmar was still around, and they're making that a thing now.
wounds, Total Warhammer keeps crashing.
Sigmar is the god
I
of the
changed
Empire.
the mod list, updated and reinstalled some mods, and then just turned them all off. Still randomly crashes when I attack a settlement. Although random might not quite be the word, because it'll repeatedly crash on the same settlement when I reload. So unfortunately, properly getting footage or even just the damn screenshots like I somehow managed to squeeze into a video about gameplay without feeling any amount of shame isn't gonna happen. TLDR though, with him moving to Cathay, you can now truly blast Fortunate Son while you bombard everyone with a cheap cast of Searing Doom from his Pegasus. Especially if you install the Immortal Empire's Expanded mod, which adds Koresh. Rather disappointing, both because I'm losing out on a chance to play Total Warhammer for my job, and because I'd written the entire script for Do or Don't Total War Gelt. It was another 4 pages, so my apologies for that. I'll have that fixed up for next time I do one of these. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You were the gold turning into lead trick to my Gelt, a crucial part in me BSing my way through all these uploads. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe.
He gives a lot of good information, but yeah. How would you like Balthasar Gelt?
Interesting gimmick, interesting stuff going on. And you know, you always need that one asshole obsessed with gold.
Yeah. Honestly, I now want to make a wizard just all about turning things and people into gold. Maybe for a D&D campaign. Anyway. Thank you
Mayhaps.
Thank you all so much for coming by. If you like what I'm doing here, please do consider subscribing. It helps a lot more than you'd think. Anyway, I'll see you all later. Bye, guys.
See you later.